the day. The day was a miserable day. I mean, it was a...
Really? I thought...
Well, was it? Well, I can tell you now, it was the worst royal engagement I ever did. You know, I thought to myself, you know, this is all showbiz rubbish. You know, the whole thing was just stage managed to suit them. Worst royal wedding I ever did. He was angry, and I felt, you know, we were punished for that. To offend our queen like he did in that book, you know, it really upset the king. And you know, I don't think he could easily forgive that. And I imagine the king's had strong words with him over it.
Arthur Edwards has just dropped a bombshell on what really went down at Meghan and Harry's wedding, and it's not pretty. It's not just shocking, it's downright ugly and embarrassing for the couple and even the royal family. When the news of Meghan and Harry's marriage first hit, the United Kingdom couldn't have been more thrilled for the marriage of Prince Harry. People were eagerly looking forward to the big day. But, according to Arthur Edwards, who has been around the royal family for years and knows them inside and out, what unfolded that day was far from what we all expected. Arthur, a man who's traveled the world with King Charles himself, was there to capture every intimate moment, every little glance exchanged between the bride and groom. But instead of catching that magic, the wedding captured him in ways no one could have foreseen. Instead of a grand celebration, what he saw was chaos behind the scenes.
The photographers they engaged for the job was 5 feet away. You know, it was just hopeless. And then the carriage shot, when they went past me in the carriage, they looked the other way. So for me, it was a disaster.
The wedding was hyped up to be a huge deal. Celebrities from all over the world were in attendance. Names like Oprah, Elton John, and Serena Williams graced the event.
You know, and then Oprah Winfrey had met them once. She was a guest. The Clooneys, you know, the guests. I mean, never met them before, but they were the guests. And, you know, I thought to myself, you know, this is all showbiz rubbish, you know.
Did you ever get a sense then that they wanted out, that they wanted a California life, that they wanted showbiz, that they weren't interested? If they weren't interested in making people feel welcome at the wedding,
It was dubbed the wedding of the century for a reason, but things didn't go as smoothly as the media had portrayed. The wedding planner, who was supposed to be in control of everything, was completely thrown off guard by the turnout. With so many people showing up, it became clear the event was way more overwhelming than anyone had prepared for.
The guest list, beyond the lone family member she invited, was simply inviting celebrities who were total strangers to her. I could see, especially with a wedding of this scale, inviting a handful of people who you do not know, but certainly not to this extent. There were a huge amount of guests who she had never met. Some people didn't even come. Like, for example, Reese Witherspoon said, "Why would I go? I don't even know them."
Arthur paints a vivid picture of what seemed like a hot mess from the very start. From where you were sitting at home, it probably looked like a beautiful, glamorous occasion. But for Arthur and the rest of the guests, it was less of a celebration and more like a survival mission. The heat at the venue was so intense that it could burn anyone standing there. Arthur, being a part of the royal circle, had to wear a traditional royal outfit, a suit so elaborate it made you think it was made for winter, not a summer wedding. But there he was, uncomfortably sweltering, trying to keep his cool while feeling like he'd rather be doing anything else. He was trying to keep his composure, but inside, all he could think of was how badly he wanted to escape the heat. Arthur and the guests were stuck standing in the burning sun, with no shade to protect them, no place to cool off. Celebrities in their best outfits were fanning themselves desperately with the official wedding programs. It was not the kind of glamorous wedding that you were probably imagining. And then there was the food, or rather, the lack of it. Arthur reveals that the banquet was a complete letdown. Instead of the grand royal feast that everyone was expecting, they were served tiny finger foods. These canapes were so small and underwhelming that guests only left feeling hungrier than satisfied. Some guests were so frustrated that they grumbled about it, even saying they would have been better off staying home than enduring the heat just to be given a handful of small snacks. But as bad as the heat and the food were, they weren't the worst parts. Arthur couldn't believe what he saw when it came to the seating arrangements. High-profile royals, some with decades of service to the crown, found themselves seated at the back of the venue while minor royals were placed at the front. Can you imagine? Important figures who had dedicated their lives to the monarchy shuffled to the back, while lesser royals had the best seats in the house? Arthur himself found himself sitting with one of these minor royals, completely blocking his view of the couple. He joked that it felt like he was watching the event through a GPS app. If only there was a GPS to help navigate through the chaos of that wedding. At the wedding, the British media were in a hot mess because Prince Harry wasn't happy with them for what they had done when he became engaged to Meghan. She was criticized and looked down upon, and it didn't sit well with him. At the wedding, when he was supposed to be smiling for the camera, he was avoiding the lens, trying to make sure there were no good shots of him and the bride.
Harry was angry with us, really, because some of the things that have been said about Meghan, and quite rightly, some of the things that were said about Meghan during the engagement were pretty harsh. I want to sort of mention them now, but some of them were pretty unfair as well. And so he was angry, and I felt, we were punished for that. And in fact, I never got one picture in the paper published from that day.
Arthur himself was frustrated by Harry's attitude. Instead of the wedding being the wedding of the century for Arthur, it became the worst wedding he had ever covered in his entire life. When he saw how things were going, he couldn't wait for it to be over so he could head home and get some rest.
I think, I've done some really lovely royal weddings. I did both King Charles's weddings. I did William's wedding. I did Andrew's wedding. I did Sophie and Edward. They were lovely occasions. But that today, I couldn't get out of Windsor quick enough. I promise you that.
The worst royal wedding.
What was supposed to be a beautiful celebration of love turned into what Arthur describes as a formal networking event. It was obvious to him that for Harry and Meghan, this wedding wasn't just a wedding. It was a carefully orchestrated media event designed to keep the spotlight firmly on them. It wasn't about tradition, royal duties, or anything to do with the history of the monarchy. It was about creating buzz, generating headlines, and keeping their names on everyone's lips, especially since they had plans to break away from the royal family. Arthur doesn't mince words when he says the wedding was far from the grand, enchanting affair we all hoped for. Instead of a magical royal celebration, it felt more like a battle for survival. The guests were fighting the heat, trying to look elegant in the sweltering sun, all while dealing with the chaos around them. According to Arthur, the wedding wasn't about royal tradition. It felt like a cold, formal event, one that was all about positioning Harry and Meghan for their future in the media world. Harry and Meghan had a clear plan for this wedding. The goal wasn't to celebrate love or family. It was to stay relevant after they left the royal family. They knew that, without the title of being part of the royal family, the only way to stay in the media spotlight was by ensuring that the media kept talking about them. And that's exactly what they did. The wedding wasn't just a ceremony, it was their grand exit strategy. It was their way of making sure they'd remain in the public eye. Arthur suggests that, for Meghan and Harry, this wedding marked a turning point. It wasn't just about marrying each other, it was about making a statement. A statement that, from that moment forward, they would be on their own terms. They would no longer be part of the royal family's constraints. This wedding was the beginning of their new life, a life they claimed would be about privacy, but one that was still fueled by a constant desire for fame and media attention.
He decided to leave the royal family and go his own way in the United States, and he's just behaving, I think, sometimes appallingly. Certainly some of the things he said about members of the royal family, certainly, and Camilla and Catherine and his brother. I think you just don't do that with families.
Even after the wedding, the drama didn't stop. Arthur mentions that Harry and Meghan's decision to distance themselves from the royal family became painfully obvious when they made their first public appearance after the ceremony. Instead of embracing their royal roots, they went on Oprah's show to air their grievances. They claimed that racism and mistreatment were rampant within the royal family, but Arthur wasn't having it.
No, most of that interview was left on the cutting room floor because it was so one-sided and it was so unfair. And I think about watching it now, and the bit about Archie and the colour of his skin. And I knew they'd be seething. I knew the Queen would be seething. I knew that the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, would be seething. It would be so unfair.
Having spent decades covering royal events, he called the Oprah interview one-sided and unfair. He argued that it was just another example of how the couple seemed more interested in airing their personal grievances than respecting royal traditions. For Arthur, the wedding was a symbolic moment. It wasn't just about a day of celebration, it marked the couple's break from royal life. This wasn't just the wedding of the century, it was the beginning of their transformation into a media empire, a journey that would take them deep into the world of celebrity projects, media ventures, and commercial business. It wasn't just a wedding, it was the birth of their brand. And let's not forget the aftermath of the wedding. In the years that followed, Harry and Meghan's departure from royal life became even more apparent. They had their two beautiful children, Archie and Lilibet, but their relationship with the royal family became even more strained. They kept their children away from Harry's side of the family, claiming privacy was the reason, but it's clear there was more going on than what they were letting on.
And it's one of the saddest things of all, Matt, of course, is that the children don't get to see their grandfather, either grandfather, you know, and that's really so awful because they're not getting to meet their cousins and to know their cousins, and it's such a shame for them.
Having cut ties with the royal family, Harry returned to London for the Invictus Games ceremony. Arthur reveals that he allegedly turned down an offer to stay at the royal palace, citing security concerns. But does that really make sense? After all, the level of security at the palace is second to none. It's heavily protected.
When he was over for the Invictus Games ceremony, he didn't want to stay in a royal residence that was offered to him by the king because he didn't feel he had enough protection there.
Was this just a way for Harry to show that since the wedding, he has nothing to do with the royal family? He wanted to be counted out of their world and live the normal life that he had so longed for. He was so concerned about his safety that he chose to stay at Coworth Park Hotel near Windsor Castle, where he could arrange his own security detail and enjoy the convenience of choosing his accommodations. Arthur suggests that his safety concerns might have been an excuse to justify his preference for staying elsewhere.
Excuse, I think he wanted to stay in a hotel, and he was determined to do that. And don't forget, he travels with a small retinue of bodyguards as well. And so I suspect that was the reason why he did it. He had his own protection, and he felt that was enough.
Arthur's final thoughts on the wedding leave a lasting impression. What was supposed to be a joyful fairy tale moment turned into a spectacle of ambition and personal branding. The wedding, in all its disarray, has become a reminder that things are often not as they seem. What looks like a dream come true from the outside might, in reality, be something entirely different behind the scenes. So, what do you think? Was this wedding really as grand as it was made out to be, or was it all just part of a bigger media game? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.